Perfect. We should be live.
Excellent.
So welcome everyone to our virtual town hall with Veronica Tsepkalo, who organized a political campaign in the past to challenge what we call the last dictator in Europe, Alexander Lukashenko. She's been, along with many other brave women and some men, fighting on the front lines to promote democracy, freedom and rights in Belarus for more than a year now. And we are so thrilled that she can join us. We've been doing a lot of those town halls at now ahead of the G7 specifically to ask countries to take stronger actions across the world to promote freedom and democracy. I'm Colombe, I'm joined by my co-founder Andrea, and we are asking you all to send us all of your questions, comments, ideas, and thoughts on Facebook. We'll be passing them on and we'll try to address as many as possible, even though it might be a bit tough as we have so many of our own as well. Veronica, thank you. I wanted to kick off the discussion by asking you if you could tell us a bit about the situation in Belarus right now when it comes to democracy and the political system, because we saw for many months mass protests on the streets. We also saw mass arrests. A lot of people read in the news about the plane that was rerouted and the activists that were arrested. But can you tell us as well, from your perspective, what has been happening?
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It is a pleasure for me to be here, and thank you about talking about Belarus, bringing the subject of Belarus, because for Belarus people it's very important to be heard of. Well, if answering your question, talking about the situation in Belarus, what can I say? We all witness what's happening in Belarus. The situation is getting worse every day. Every single day, the situation is getting worse. The regime is putting so much pressure on Belarus people, and Belarus judicial system has become a machine of oppression and terror for the people of Belarus. Today, for example, Lukashenko, he signed an order, a law under which if a person wears a national colors of Belarus, the national colors of Belarus, historic colors of Belarus are red and white, this person may face up from 3 to 7 years in the prison. So meaning, like for example, today, as you can see, I'm wearing this manicure in red and white color. So if I was in Belarus, most probably I would be facing the imprisonment, and only for wearing this historic colors of Belarus. If you look at what happened in Belarus for the last, for example, 3 weeks, for example, May 17, 2021, Lukashenko passed a law, and accordingly to this law, the law enforcement agencies, officers, has the absolute power to murder a civilian and this person will not be responsible under this new law. On May 18, 2021, Lukashenko shut down Tutbay. Tutbay, this is like a media, it's a leading media portal in Belarus. So the entire media portal was shut down. 30 journalists were put in the prison. So we say there is no freedom of speech whatsoever in our country. On May 23rd, Lukashenko ordered and hijacked the European plane, Ryanair flight. I know everybody, the entire community, all the European countries, all the world leading countries were witnessing this crime when he hijacked the civil plane only to arrest one of Belarus journalists, Roman Protasevich, and his girlfriend. And we have to realize that we're not talking about the criminal, we are talking about the independent journalist who was just covering the situation in Belarus during the presidential campaign. And if we look what happened next, on the 25th of May, Lukashenko opened a criminal case against Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Latvia, Edgars Rinkēvičs, and the mayor of Riga, Martin Sakis, for just replacing the current flag of Belarus with the historic white and red flag, the symbol of a democratic movement and democratic opposition in our country. On June 5th, 2021, Stepan Latipov, this is one of our political prisoners, he tried to take his life due to the pressure which he is experiencing and facing while being in the prison for the last 6 months. And we all witnessed recently what happened with Roman Protasevich, the one who was on this plane, Ryanair plane. It was demonstrated on the state-owned TV, the interrogation of this journalist under the torture, which is absolutely unacceptable for any European country in the 21st century, and we need to stop it. And also, if we talk about what happened only in May, I'm talking about the time frame for 3 weeks. Witold Ashirok, it's one of our political prisoners. He was killed. He was murdered in the prison. So Lukashenko broke the basic human right, is humanitarian basket of OSCE. So every person, every citizen of the country has the right to live and return back to their home country. Now, according to Belarus law, if you're a Belarus citizen, you can only cross the land border twice a year. Can you imagine? Only twice a year. Therefore, Lukashenko pushes Belarus people to leave our country. So the situation is getting worse every day in Belarus. That's why we need to stop this. We ask international community to help Belarus people to get rid of this last dictatorship in Europe.
Thank you so much, Veronica. Really like hearing these words from you are very powerful words. And I think for many of us, it reminds us how important is our engagement and do our best, even if we are outside and away from the heat of the moment to really support. I have a quick follow-up question for you linked to this. I mean, obviously you described already a bit the situation, how it evolved in time, but I think it would be very important for our activists, our followers, especially on Facebook, to understand how the situation evolved compared to 1 year ago. So, do you think when you're going in the peak of the protest, do you think that basically the regime is prevailing and new energies are needed? Do you see the light at the end of the tunnel? Can you tell us a bit more? How do you see the evolution of the protest?
Well, actually, if we talk about the evolution of the protests in Belarus, and if you look at the protest mode or movement has not gone whatsoever. I mean, we still, you have to realize the country where we live in, the citizens of Belarus, I mean, where the citizens of Belarus live in. For example, the people get the sentence to the prison for absolutely nothing. Within Belarus Women's Foundation, because when I left Belarus together with Belarus activists from different countries, we established Belarus Women's Foundation, and our people, the members, our volunteers within Belarus Women's Foundation are located in different countries, in Belarus, in Austria, in Great Britain. We have very active activists from Great Britain, in Germany, Denmark, in many, many other countries. And first of all, I would like to, using this momentum, I would like to thank my team, because these women are heroes for me. They've been, outside of the country for many, many years. Some of them has never, like Alison from the Great Britain, she's a British, but she's really one of us, and she fights for our future. She fights for Belarus really hard. So thank you so much, ladies. I really appreciate you, and I think we have the best team in the world. I'm not exaggerating. But returning back to your question, what I would like to say, within Belarus Women's Foundation, we started to collect together the stories of the women who got suffered from the regime. And when we started to collect the stories, I was shocked with how repression works in Belarus. I mean, people get the real terms in the prisons up to 5 years, 6 years for absolutely nothing. We have some stories of the 18 years old girls who were sentenced to the prison for 4 or 5 years. And once again, I would like to underline, these people are not criminals. They did not commit any crimes. All they did, they just fought for the freedom. They fought for the democracy. They fought for our country. They fought for their families. They fought for the basic democratic rights. So the Lukashenko, he built a system which penalized people for absolutely nothing. This is number one. People are put in the prison for at no reason. Number two are people, we live in a country where the average salary in Belarus is less than $500 a month. If you go out, for example, outside for the unauthorized, so-called unauthorized meeting, you get the penalties, which are extremely high. So the people are very scared. The people are terrified of everything what is regime does with them, because you probably have heard of the murders, you've heard of the rapings, you've heard of the beatings up, humiliations, etc. of the civilian citizens. Therefore, people are horrified, people are scared, but at the same time, we try, the opposition of Belarus, who was forced, by the way, to leave Belarus because we're not allowed to be in Belarus. In Belarus, Lukashenko built a system where not a single opposition leader can survive. You will be either murdered, you will be put in the jail, imprisoned, or you end up in the exile. And this is what happened with most of the opposition leaders in Belarus. That's why we're not able to stay in our home country. So we try to change the tactics. We try to work with a different part of our society. For example, recently we launched a project which is mostly focused on the law enforcement agencies, because we understand they're very close to Lukashenko. We understand that if our project is successful, because the main purpose of this project to collect money is 11 million euros to arrest the criminal number one. The criminal number one is Lukashenko. Therefore, we try to, change the tactics, because for us, the safety of our people, the life of Belarus people are the top priority. We cannot risk with their lives. We cannot risk with their freedom. We cannot risk with their health, and etc. That's why I would like to underline that people cannot forget what happened with Belarus. This cannot be forgotten whatsoever, because we all witnessed what happened to the peaceful protesters, to the young ladies, to the children, to the elderly people. This cannot be forgotten, and believe me, we will be fighting until the victory.
Thank you. I have so many follow-up questions. I'm trying to order them at the same time in my head, because since the beginning of the protest, something that has really struck me is the amount of people that are putting their lives on the line. And this is not just something in Belarus, right? We see the same thing in Myanmar. You see the same thing in Russia and so on. There's been so many countries in which, we know that the consequences of going on the streets are literally life and death. And Belarus is one of the situations where, you showed your nail polish, right? Just for wearing those colors, you can be imprisoned. I remember a case of someone wearing a white and red sock and being arrested for that. And it wasn't even, I think, as part of a protest, which is insane. So my first question, I guess, would be, considering the risks, considering the fact that we know that mass arrests take place, and we know that once people are arrested, they risk being tortured and sometimes worse, do you think that protests should keep on going in the country? Are they needed for your projects, such as the crowdfunding, to be able to sue Lukashenko to keep on going? And what would you tell both Belarusian citizens in the country and abroad as to the allies to effect change? What would you ask them to do?
Well, actually, we do realize that the protest should go on, because, Lukashenko, several years ago, he said, if there will be 100,000 people on the streets, he will give up their power, because he would always say, if people don't want me any longer, I'm ready to give up the power. But last summer, last autumn, last fall, Belarus people proved we are not 100,000 outside. There were 350,000 people. There were 1 million altogether people outside, out on the streets, and still Lukashenko doesn't want to give up the power. He's the kind of person who would do anything but not to give up his power. And he doesn't care if the people of Belarus wants him. He doesn't care if the people of Belarus still believes him, etc. But for us, it is very important that, first of all, that we see that a lot of people still support our movement. The movement of freedom, the movement for the democracy, the movement of the new Belarus. This is number one. And by the way, we appreciate our diaspora, because we have a lot of people who live outside of Belarus, and really your support is very crucial for Belarus, for Belarus people who still stays in the country, because it's for us, it's just a sign of solidarity. It just gives us the feeling that we are not left alone in our fight, that we are not alone, we feel their support. We appreciate the diasporas across the world. We appreciate the international community for, as I said, bringing the subject of Belarus on the table. We appreciate what you did for the refugees, because unfortunately a lot of people had to flee the country, like my family. We could not stay in Belarus, and there are thousands of Belarus people who had to flee the country, because Lukashenko, he does everything to put pressure on us. He does everything just to push us outside, away from our homeland. And like I said many times, hopefully most of the people will return back when Lukashenko regime falls down. But we do realize at the same time that some percentage of the people will stay in overseas or in other countries because of many reasons. But in any way, we need to fight for our future. We need to fight for our country. We need to fight for our children. That's why, thank you so much. Thank you, Belarus people who's inside of the country. Thank you, international community, for putting the pressure on Lukashenko regime, because we want to make sure that he's completely isolated. I mean, it's like a road with several directions, inside of the country, outside of the country, international community. It's like, I think everything together in combination will work out.
Thank you so much, Veronica, for this. And it's very clear that your call to actions are very clear, and I hope that many people will hear them. Before jumping to the interesting question we received on Zoom and also on Facebook, I saw there are many others. I have a follow-up question on what you said. It's unprecedented, completely unprecedented for someone to sue in a sitting president in another country. So I wanted to deep dive a bit on this topic, understanding what's your hope for this action? What's the direction that you hope this case will take? And do you think that more countries should partake in this effort? More people should sue Lukashenko in other countries as well?
Andrea, answering your question, I started answering your question in my previous answer. Within Belarus Women's Foundation, for the 6 months, we did collect the evidences, the testimonies from the women who got suffered from the Lukashenko regime. These women, they went through the prisons, they went through the, humiliations, beatings, etc. And 3 weeks ago, Belarus Women's Foundation, we filed the claim to the International Criminal Court in The Hague, and we filed the claim against the citizen of Belarus, Lukashenko, because we do not believe that he is a legitimate. He's not legitimate president any longer, because he destroyed all the evidences of the presidential campaign in Belarus. So basically, we hope for the international community. By the way, last week we sent the letter of the Security Council to the United Nations, and we did ask the members, the permanent members and the elected members of the Security Council to support our claim, because we understand, these two organizations, they support each other. So because Great Britain, you're a permanent member of the Security Council, we would highly appreciate if you could support our claim to the International Criminal Court, because within our claim we provided the testimonies of this is video testimonies of those women who got suffered from this regime. And once again, we ask entire international community, especially those countries who signed their own statute, because their own statute is it's a key principle, basic principle for ICC, International Criminal Court. Therefore, we ask Great Britain to provide your support within our claim and initiate a case. It's a criminal case against Lukashenko, crimes for humility, for humility, because as I said, we provided the list of the crimes which he committed against Belarus people. In this particular case, you as a Great Britain can help and support us in this request. And we realize, we understand, once they initiate the criminal case, we will receive much more testimonies, because people now are scared, people now are afraid. Many people still stay in Belarus, and they're very, they're cautious about their security and the security of their families. But once the case will be initiated, I'm sure there will be hundreds of cases, thousands of cases. By the way, officially, there are 1,000 cases of tortures which was documented. Not a single criminal case was initiated against those who murdered 12 civilians in Belarus.
Thank you for this. I agree with Andrea that I think it's a very interesting technique, right? When you fight a dictator, there's a lot of different techniques to be adopted. So we see, for example, from Tibet, a government in exile, and I think we're beginning to see this as well with Belarus. We see from Venezuela, an opposition government both in and outside of the country. And I think suing a sitting president, an illegitimate sitting president, is extremely interesting as a technique. And what we like to do at now as well is try to connect different struggles and understand what we can learn from one another. So what would be, so let's say The Hague, here's the case and rules that he committed unspeakable crimes. What is your hope after this? Do you think that this will help in kicking him out?
Well, actually, we've been real nice in treating Lukashenko, because if he's sued in Belarus, according to Belarus law, we still have the death penalty in Belarus. And the crimes which he committed against Belarus people will definitely put him at the risk of the death penalty. But under ICC law, a person could not be executed or sentenced to death. Maximum he could be sentenced to the prison. That's why we don't want him to die. I mean, personally, I don't want him to die, because I understand for him it would be very easy. I want him to be, persecuted under the European Union law, under the independent law, and I want him to be responsible for all the crimes which he committed against our people, against our activists, including, by the way, my friend Maria Kalesnikova, who was in prison because together with Maria and Svetlana, we were running presidential campaign in summer 2020, and Maria now she's facing up to 12 years in the prison for absolutely nothing. And this gives me, and it's not only Maria, it's hundreds and thousands of women and men, because today we just give you, I would like to give you some numbers. Starting August 2020, 35,000 people went through Belarus prisons, which is an absolute record for any European country since the World War II. As of today, there are 467 political prisoners. 61 out of them, 61 are female, and as I said, there are very young ladies, 18 years old and higher. And if you look at what they were sentenced to, I am speechless. I have no words, because as I said, people stay in the prisons for absolutely nothing, and we need to change it now.
Thank you, Veronica. And I think that this links very well to one of the questions we received in the chat. I think the last one before moving to the topic of women that is very important as well in this context. But Maurizio asked, what do you think the EU should do to help unlock the gridlock? Which obviously is also related to the matter of the hijacking that happened in the skies of Belarus and many other kind of interrelated situations with the European Union that is the major pro-democracy bloc neighboring Belarus. So what's your take on this one?
Well, actually, with this hijacked plane, EU countries now witness that Lukashenko is a threat not only for Belarus people, because he has been terrorizing Belarus people for many, many years, but now he became a threat for international community, for the citizens of EU countries. That's why we ask European Union countries to be more aggressive towards Lukashenko in a civil way. First of all, as I said, we send a claim to the International Criminal Court. Please support our claim. Please help us to initiate the criminal charges against Lukashenko. Number two, as I said, as I described, we sent 15 letters to the UN Security Council, to the United Nations. Please support our letter, because one of the letters I sent to the Great Britain, I sent to the other, to Russia, to China, to France, to all the Security Council members. Then please help us with the photo exhibition, because one of our ideas within Belarus Women's Foundation, we would like to arrange a photo exhibition in EU capitals where we are going to demonstrate the atrocities, the pictures of the victims who got suffered from Lukashenko in the prisons. And please help us just to arrange these exhibitions so the entire Europe will witness and see what happened to Belarus people. And the last thing, as I said, please, recently, 2 weeks ago, we launched this initiative. It calls tribunal.life, where we listed all the crimes which Lukashenko committed against Belarus people, and we collect the money to arrest this criminal, number one in Europe. And the new feature of this campaign or this initiative, you do not pay money until the criminal is arrested. Basically, if you decide to donate £5, £10, £20 within this initiative, this money sits on your account. This money reserves on your account, and this money will be only charged from your account only in case of arrest of this criminal. For Belarus people, please realize, for Belarus people, 11 million euros, it's not a big amount of money. Belarus people would love to, just to donate this, to donate money and get rid of the Lukashenko. But at the same time, we have to realize Belarus people, Belarusians are very afraid of the potential, so-called potential, potential threat, because we're afraid that the ban could really, just provide any information, etc. That's why for Belarus people, it's one of the risks, and therefore we ask international community to help us to get rid of the last dictator in Europe, because we all understand and realize if Belarus is peaceful, democratic country, it's going to be the peace in the entire region. Please help us to get rid of him.
I think it's very clear. I think, and I completely support all of the initiatives. I think as social media manager, we'll be posting the links to the different things you just mentioned under the live. Someone responded to what you said with what I assume means "Long live Belarus" in the chat. I hope that we can help you as well in organizing those exhibitions across Europe and across the world. To be honest, the duty to remember and for people to kind of be forced to see what is happening is absolutely fundamental. I wanted to also quickly jump on another topic. We got quite a few questions on this, linked to women in Belarus. So it's also in a way a positive topic. We saw so many women on the front lines in Belarus. I remember at the beginning of the protest seeing those lines, entire lines of women holding each other's hands and protecting protesters from the police, which was mind-blowing and so inspiring. And can you tell us how come so many women, including yourself, like the three main opposition figures that people know of are three women? How come women are the ones at the forefront of the protest and what it means?
You're absolutely right. The women of Belarus are incredible. Every time I read the story about Belarus women in the mass media, I get so emotional because, there are so many female heroes in our country, starting from, as I said, Maria Kalesnikova, who told about her passport, beauty queen Olga Khizhenkova, who spent 42 days in the prison, our basketball star Elena Levchenko, our 74-year-old Nina Baginskaya. I mean, there are hundreds, thousands of Belarus women who are heroes now, who became heroes since the presidential elections. So for me, all of these women are heroes. For me, all of Belarus women who lives abroad for many years and still help us in our fight are heroes. And as I said, like we get the stories within Belarus Women's Foundation. And when I was interviewing some of the women, I was impressed how women are strong. I was impressed how women ease each other, they were easing each other pain while staying in the prison. And I think one of the reasons why women are so strong, because like Belarus, we were part of the World War II. This is my guess, and many families, like in my family, grandparents, grandmothers, they stayed without men, and the women became very, very strong in Belarus. I mean, when we do not have a man next to us, we just fight by ourselves. And as I said, like I was impressed during the fight, during a peaceful protest, how the women were protecting their men, and because they were standing, in front of the men, because women believed that the law enforcement agencies would never hurt a woman. As I said, like in Belarus Belarus society is very calm, is very democratic. I mean, it's very peaceful because it's in our DNA. Each and every family in Belarus lost the loved ones during the World War II. And as I said, like we don't want to have any wars. We just want to live in a peaceful country. We want to live in a safe country, and we need to do everything possible just to change our country in a better way. And once again, I would like to say that our women are absolutely incredible. Our women are heroes, and our women are example for the international community. That's true.
Thank you, Veronica. And I think that you gave the perfect hint to pick up another question that we received from Facebook from our audience that are especially related to the barriers for women to speak up in Belarus. Because it seems like you trashed all these barriers, but I feel it's very interesting for our, especially women activists, female activists all over the planet to understand what are the barriers in the country, and how did you actually overcome them?
Um, I can share my story. I would like to say a couple of words about my story. What was important for me, because the regime doesn't care who you are, the regime doesn't care your age, doesn't care your social, your place in the society, etc. They use all possible and impossible ways or methods to discourage you, to put pressure on you. And in our case, in the case of other Belarusian women, the regime used our children. Which, can you imagine? I mean, we even within our foundation, we had several stories of the political prisoners who is still. One story really shocked me. I mean, the woman of 5 kids, and she's in the prison, and the youngest daughter, was put to the orphanage house, despite the fact that the 3 elderly children, they're above the age of 18, and they can take care of the younger children. But the regime doesn't care. They just hurt people emotionally. They hurt people physically. They don't care what is in front of us. They just care how to stay in the power. And I think that's why I'm saying the women are very, very fragile. Women, fragile, but at the same time they're so strong. And by the way, this story happened in my case, because the regime started to collect the data on my children, and that's why we took a decision just to leave. My husband, he left with children to Russia, and I stayed in Belarus, and I continued the presidential campaign together with Svetlana and Maria. In this case, I was a little bit released, because I understood that the regime could not use my children and could not put the pressure on me. That's why just all the excellent words, all the praises goes to Belarus women for their bravery, for being so strong, and for being so wonderful.
It's this technique. I mean, it's something we can't imagine, I think, in most countries, and even in places under authoritarian rule, often people are being targeted in insane manners, but children are generally left out of this, right? Like, it's a type of collective punishment. It's something that you hear very little of it, which is absolutely insane. We got a follow-up question, which is, what would you want to say to your children now that they've fled with you? How do you make them understand what is happening?
It's a good question, because I never hide anything from my children, even though they're relatively small. My children are only 8-year-old. I have twins. We at home, we always watch news channels, Euronews, BBC, CNN, etc. So when my children saw the pictures from Belarus, the pictures from the streets, what was happening in Belarus, of course they were asking me questions. Why would this happen? Why is this happening in Belarus? What's going on? I mean, we live in a nice country. For them, they lived in a nice country because they were next to their parents. And that's why I sat down with them and I just explained why we had to leave the country. And I explained why we are not in Belarus any longer. And the most frequently question which I hear from my children, Mom, when we are going back home, because they dearly miss our family, they dearly miss our friends, they miss their friends, and they're looking forward to go back home. I'm just being open, honest with my children, even though, as I said, they're quite small.
Thank you. Sorry, Veronica. It took a second for me to unmute. I think it's very clear for us, the situation, and it's very inspiring to hear why you got involved. Honestly, like, it moved me, and obviously I have a very different story, but I see the merit to really put everything on the line for democracy and freedom in this particular case. I want to ask you a question that we always ask our guests, because it's very interesting as a global movement, the role that we can play in these kind of struggles. And we obviously touched upon another question, but I think it would be very interesting for our activists and volunteers to understand if you personally think that change in the particular context of Belarus can only come from within, or if the international pressure can actually play a major role in topping, hopefully, Lukashenko in the foreseeable future.
Andrea, as I said, like it's a combination of the factors. We should to put the pressure from from all sides. Inside of the country, people play their role. International community, they have to play their role. Just as I said, like we need to make sure that the Lukashenko is completely isolated, because if he's isolated, if he can only travel to Russian Federation, that's all. This is the only country where he can freely go. But that's why we initiated this case. This why we we filed the claim to the ICC, because it's one of the factors which can potentially stop him. But in any way, please go ahead with the sanctions, because we spoke a lot about the sanctions, but the sanctions has to be made in a smart way, because we don't want to hurt just ordinary Belarus people. We just want to hurt one person. I mean, like hurt financially one person, and this is Lukashenko only, because we don't want Belarus people to suffer. As I said, like the average salary in Belarus is below $500 a month, and this salary is going down because of the economy, deteriorating economy, because of the overall situation in the country. So please, while making or taking any decision, please talk to us, because we stay in touch with our people every day. We talk to our people 10, 12, 20 times a day. We know what's going on inside of the country, but at the same time, please help us, as I said, help us with the initiatives which I spoke earlier, because they are very crucial, I believe.
And I think you mentioned something very interesting. Sorry if I jump in again. There is a relation between Belarus and Russia, obviously, and how Putin would be so far a safe haven for Lukashenko. And I want to ask you if you see a scenario where actually, because of sanction or other behaviors, we manage to, like the international community can try to kind of seize these kind of relationship between Belarus and Russia to isolate even further Lukashenko. So maybe pushing Putin to the extent of the leader feeling like he cannot back anymore Lukashenko. Do you see this scenario playing out in any way, or do you think it's just a dream and will never happen?
No, definitely. Every time when you meet with the Russian president, just please raise the topic of Belarus, talk about Belarus, because we as Belarus people, we do not understand why President Putin would support Lukashenko, because he sees what's happening in Belarus. He sees all the atrocities which are happening in Belarus, and we don't, as a Belarus citizen, myself, I don't understand why would he support Lukashenko, because you probably know that in Belarus we speak Russian language. In Belarus we were together in the Soviet Union for many years, so we share the same culture. We have friends and relatives who lives in both countries, in Belarus, in Russian Federation. So we do want to have a good relationship with Russian Federation, but at the same time, it's for us the crucial to be sovereign country, to be independent country. We don't want to be part of any countries, but we want to make sure that we have an excellent relationship with Russia, because as I said, we have relatives, friends who reside and live in Russia. We would like to have excellent relationship with the European Union, because we border with 3 countries from the European Union: Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland, and we want to have a good relationship, nice relationship with Ukraine, because some of our family members, they live in Ukraine, and friends, they live in Ukraine as well. We don't want to live in the position of choosing. You have to be friend with this country, or you don't have to, or you have to be friend with this country. We don't want to choose. We just want to build like good and trustworthy business relationship with all our neighbors.
I think that's really interesting, right? Belarus is really the perfect intersection of so many different geopolitical tensions right now. So you have both like
it's not a matter of geopolitics. Propaganda or state-owned or state-run TV channels and mass media in Belarus, they keep talking about geopolitics. It's not the matter of geopolitics. We're talking about the elections. We talk about the open and democratic elections, and we want to choose the president, the person who will lead our country by ourselves. We don't want this choice to be made instead of us, because we are a nation and we have right to choose the person who will lead us within the next 5 years.
100%. And it's something that, like, from what you were saying, you know, we want to have a good relationship with our neighbors and we just want to be able to choose our future, basically. It sounds so, I mean, it's literally the simplest of things, yet so many people are dying and being imprisoned because of it.
Exactly.
Which, you know, it's like a crazy demand. It's the very basics, right? Like, we want to be able to vote, we want to be able to be represented.
It's a basic constitutional right, which, you know, like, and we do not violate any law in Belarus whatsoever. We just want to have this basic right to get back to Belarus people.
Yes, exactly. I wanted to ask you quickly about the plane that got rerouted. It's, you know, it was such an international major incident. So many people got, so many heads of states, so many agencies got involved, and yet the activists are still in prison, right? A major international incident took place, and they're still in prison. What else can be done to help free them right now?
Basically, I just once again listed you a couple of initiatives which will hopefully help us to release all the political prisoners. Because let me remind you that there are 467 political prisoners in Belarus right now, and 61 of them are women. All these women should be released immediately. And in order to release them, we understand that Lukashenko has to go, because otherwise, it's for us, for everybody, it will be a challenge to release these people, because Lukashenko is a type of person who always trades political prisoners with the East or with the West. Therefore, be vocal, please support our initiatives, talk about Belarus, bring international attention to the subject of political prisoners, because, as I said, like 467 political prisoners, and we have to keep in mind, these people are not, did not commit any crimes. These people are not criminals. These people just fought for their basic constitutional rights. That's why, please, from your side, support our initiatives. Help us with, especially with the latest initiative. Help us with the International Criminal Court. Be vocal about what's happening in Belarus. Talk about Belarus. Talk about our people, and help us to fight this dictatorship.
Thank you, Veronica. I think, like, I love the clarity of your call to action. I said it before. I think it is really what we need, because many people are often asking, like, how can we be part of this? And I think this is exactly what they want. I want to ask you a last message, maybe a message of hope. Obviously, you mentioned your family, your kids. What's your hope for them? Do you think that we're going to actually prevail at the end, and freedom will prevail, and Belarus will look very different in the next generation? Maybe a final sentence on this would be very motivational for our volunteers.
Our hope, my personal hope for my children to return back home as soon as possible. Because, as I said, our family is there, our friends are in Belarus. We need to continue our fight with the dictatorship. We need to continue our fight to release political prisoners as soon as possible. We need to fight the absence of law in Belarus. We need to become the part of the civilized. We need to become a civilized country. We need to become a safe country. And we need to become a wealthy country. And this can be achieved only when Lukashenko is gone. Therefore, please do not give up our fight, because we are going to win very soon. Живе Беларусь!
Thank you so much, Veronica. Thank you for these motivational words. We're going to upload this town hall, not only on Facebook, but on YouTube, hoping that many people watching, many people will feel the call. And as Alison is saying, obviously in London, there have been very emotional moments in the past, and Colombe and I are based here. We'll keep up the fight with Alison and help as much as we can. Thank you so much, Veronica, for your time. It's been a wonderful talk.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye.